it's my understanding that you were on the transition team for Trump. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. So one of the biggest criticisms that can be very fairly levied at the Trump administration is that they failed to staff up. They failed to place enough people in enough important positions in order to effectively conduct the policy that the president had in mind. We did get some people in the right places. Trump fired them, or they resigned, or whatever. A couple places, but generally speaking, what do you think the main issue was in terms of finding the right number of people to work in government for Trump to advance the Trump policy and Trump agenda? And if there is a problem, which it seems to me there was, what can we do differently? What would you do differently? What would we advocate for publicly? What do we do behind the scenes in a conservative environment to try to facilitate or grow more of these types of folks? What was the main issue in your experience, and how do we solve that problem moving forward? This reserve bench, I think, is the real problem.
Right. No, you need a bench, you need a cadre, you need sort of at least a couple hundred, probably more like there's 2,000 presidential appointees, I think. So you've got to be ready to go on day one with those 2,000, or who are they? And do you have the 200 people that can help you pick those 2,000? What I saw during the Trump transition was a lot of chaos. I'm used to sort of seeing early stage chaos. My background's in startups, and every startup from the inside, can look really messy. Certainly the ones that fail do, but even the ones that succeed look really messy under the hood. And so it was a fascinating environment to be in. But I think it was just politics. It's like in Trump Tower on the 14th floor between Election Day and Inauguration Day, there were an awful lot of people who had immediately surrounded, flocked there because that was the new center of power. And they weren't necessarily friends to then candidate Trump when the president was running for office. They weren't part of this America First agenda. And so you had the Reince Priebus faction, the Chris Christie faction, the Pence faction, and these sort of overlapped, but they were also different power centers, and everybody was sort of jostling for power. And then I think you had the more, Trump 2016 campaign, America First faction, but nobody really showed up on day one saying like, we have these dozen people and they're going to lead us to these dozen people and we know what we're doing. I think it caught the victory, frankly, caught a lot of people by surprise. And because of that, there was a power vacuum. And I think the more GOP establishment forces kind of took over. And it took a long time. For instance, it was like really hard for people who worked on the campaign, on the Trump campaign, and the early to actually get jobs in the administration. The way to get a job in the administration on was to, Ted Cruz, Jeb Bush, and that's a problem. The thing though is this got figured out. Like the people who came in to clean this up at the tail end of the Trump administration to run the PPO office, they were good. They were good. They were aligned with President Trump. They understood him, and so the staffing did get way better. It got way better, and that's the real crime of not having a second administration in office right now, because the staffing would have been so good, would have been so much better. And I think the thing to learn here is just show up on day one next time. Like now we know how to do it, right? If President Trump runs again, I think he'll win. And now we know how to do it. If he chooses not to run, we hopefully get a good Republican in office instead of some rhino, and we'll know how to do it. We know the people. The left is really good at it, right? They have the binder. They know who's going to be in the next two administrations already. We don't do this, and there's something charming about that, but we need to do more of it and show up prepared next time.
Yeah. So I met a Thiel fellow this summer. She was very impressive. She started multiple companies, very successful, extremely bright, well educated, even though she didn't go to college. And
It's the best way to be well educated.
yeah, exactly. Well, I learned a lot in college. Mostly I learned about myself, to be honest. But she is a product of a social initiative and a business initiative as well, that addressed this need of like creating the new talent. This may be off subject a little bit, but like, do you have a similar vision maybe for that, for like creating new bench talent for the Republican Party?
Yeah, I think so. And the problem is, or it's this fundamental question of, do you do it in DC or do you do it outside of DC? If you do it in DC, maybe everybody's just a swamp creature. And, I think this is a big problem staffing Senate offices. One reason why I know I'll be a really good senator is I have a good knack for staffing. Most senators, even conservative senators, their median staff member is quite to the left of where they are. And that's a huge problem because like, oh shit, you need a comms director, like someone, hire this person. They used to work for Rubio. And it's like, well, everybody just kind of goes along to get along, and you're always thinking about your career. And so even people who are genuinely quite conservative become moderate over time, and all of a sudden you've got like a pretty center right Senate office, and they can be first. So there's something about the homogenizing influence of DC that I think makes it hard to build the sort of America First cadre within DC. The other problem, though, is if you go outside of DC, if you just try to do it from Claremont or from somewhere else, um, is it too abstract? Is it too theoretical? Do these people actually know, the ins and outs of governance? And the answer is usually no. And so there's this huge tension here. I think it's some project to combine both. But this is, I think this is what we're doing right now. This is the environment we're in. It's can we figure out how to rebuild the Republican Party in this America First direction? It's an open question. I'm optimistic, but it is an open question.
It is indeed. The talent pool needs to be broader and deeper. Do you have a staff in mind? Are you going to get placed with a bunch of people in DC that are going to drag you to the left, or do you have a staff ready to bring with you?
No, I've got. I think I know the right people. This is one benefit of I've been running Peter Thiel's investment office for a while now. We try to invest in startups and make a lot of money, and that's all great. But he's very political, and I've gotten to be very political over the last few years, sort of behind the scenes. And so I feel like I know who are young, talented, hungry people on the so-called new right. And people disagree with each other, right? And there's a lot of intellectual diversity on the right. This is something that the left doesn't have to deal with. I think it's a blessing and a curse, but it is where we are. I just know so many of these people, and suffice it to say, they're not people who would get staffed in traditional Senate offices, which is why I know my office will be like super effective. So I know the people I want in my office, but again, to staff a presidential administration, if we fast forward to Trump 2024, or if he doesn't run someone else, we need 2,000 people. We need them ready to go, and they can't be George W. Bush Republicans. That doesn't work anymore.
I got to ask, what's it like hanging out with Peter and Eric Weinstein at the same time? I mean, you guys sit around and debate things, because I've been following Eric for a long time, and he follows me too. We've been following each other for years, and I've been watching his. This is off my script, but I'm just curious.
Yeah.
And I've been watching him for years and seeing the evolution and then discussion, and I've seen Peter speak and listen to you, and I just wonder, just any stories come to mind. I mean, just anything you could share with us of the three of you guys hashing things out, and how are you going to get Eric across the finish line?
Yeah, well, he should come on your show.
I've asked him. You could, hey, if you know him, put in a good word, would you?
Eric Weinstein, come on this show.
Awesome, let's do it.
He'd be good. I mean, it's wild. They're obviously both extremely smart. I have this running thing with Eric where like Eric's obviously not a Democrat. He's obviously not of the left or from the left. Although it's very important to his presentation that he be that. That's his thing. I didn't leave the left left me, and
Right.
It's like, fine, dude, but like you're talking about all these sort of right-wing ideas, and you're certainly friendly about it. And yeah, I mean, he is different, and he does come from some different place, but he's very smart. I just think it's like, come on over to our side, man. Just like
Let's do it.
register Republican, try to get the right people elected. The progressives, they hate him. He's anathema to them. They don't like anybody who departs from the party line. He points this out, but then tries to be centrist. So I make fun of him for that. He just says, I'm some crazy far right Republican or something. So we hash it out. But he is very interesting. And the thing I like about him and Peter, there's not two guys in the world that are like those guys. They're just very unique. I know a lot of smart people, but it's entirely possible to be smart and conventional.
Right.
And it's like most of my peers at Stanford Law School, extremely smart, extremely conventional. And now they're like undersecretaries of whatever at the Department of Transportation. Congratulations. Doesn't
Right.
really move the dial. But I think
Right.
Peter, obviously with his business career, I mean, he's a world. And Eric, I think, has just sort of exploded on the scene in the last few years because he's willing to analyze things in ways that no one else is. He's willing to, and sometimes I think that misfires, but like you got to have some guts to get out there and coin new words and pretend that you're Shakespeare. And, but like some of the times, like embedded growth obligations, it's something I use a lot. I think Eric literally didn't make up the concept, but he like identified it, coined this term for it, and actually has a lot of explanatory power in terms of like why our institutions don't work and what the sort of cliff we're heading to. So I think he's like smart and brilliant, and obviously when you get smart and brilliant people together, it's grab the popcorn. It's really fun to watch.
Smart and conventional is probably the scariest thing that we could face right now, because the party line and taking everything at face value and just pushing the regime growth is tough when it's a smart person just executing on that. We need people to be smart and risk takers and smart and think outside the box.